A warning that the story may contain graphic content that may be upsetting to viewers and children. Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge says the notion that a judge should never seek to have a romantic relationship with a person of, and I quote, a lower class, age, status or category at work is difficult to fathom. The top judge is currently on the stand in the landmark sexual harassment probe against him. Mbenenge is accused of allegedly sexually harassing Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo through in-person interactions and electronic communication between June 2021 and November 2022, an allegation he denies. When probed on the stated notion put by his counsel, Judge President Selby Mbenenge held the view that people should be viewed as adults who are free to engage in any form of a relationship.
That is a notion that is hard to fathom. The notion that a judge cannot have affection. I just say affection, or may not be interested in somebody. I believe that there's a fallacy when it comes to that. I think what is important is to view people as adult individuals. They are free to engage in whatever form of relationship as long as there's mutual consent. Your question was a bit lengthy. You mentioned something about age. When it comes to age, all I can say is I would never query a woman who is older than a man in a relationship. I would never query a man who is much older than the female party in a particular relationship. I don't want to say age is a number. All I need to say is what is important is that the adults that I've just mentioned are free to engage in whatever relationship they would like to, for as long as they are adults.
All right, let's bring you the very latest now with SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga. Canny, thank you so much for your time. And the judge president says that it shouldn't matter the age, it shouldn't matter the class, it shouldn't matter as long as it's consensual.
It seems from his testimony today, or at least the beginning of his testimony, because we're expecting to sit for a few more days to hear his version of events, that he believes that the interactions between him and Andiswa Mengo were consensual and that they were flirtatious and that she was quote-unquote playing along. But we know from Mengo's testimony that she's already stated that these were advances or alleged advances that were unwanted. That's how she experienced them. That's how she's put it before the tribunal. Here in the clip again, once again, he's saying mutually consenting adults. At the crux of this issue is the question of consent. You have the complainant stating that I never consented to any of these acts. And now you have the judge president at pains to prove that that was not the case, that they were engaged in this activity together. You saw him in a long exercise of going through those WhatsApp texts, mainly focusing on her conduct more than his, and to illustrate that there was no indication that she was not playing along, or there was no indication that there was a no, or that she wasn't comfortable with the situation at hand. But we've already had Lisa Vetten come in and quite extensively explain, because I don't really think the issue is about class or age, but rather is it appropriate for the head of the court in a senior position that enjoys the status that he enjoys, and by association the power that he enjoys, to pursue a judge's secretary, and if there was room for her to even have the option to say no. And where there is no option to say no, which Lisa Vetten has explained that is usually the case, then a person may come up with strategies to better manage the situation, which she explained in the analysis of the exchanges between the pair, that a person may keep the conversation going but never really heed to the request. So we don't really see Andiswa Mengo sending the pictures, and we don't really see that either of them confirmed before the tribunal that they have never been intimate. So none of that stuff actually happened. But we see the judge president continuously asserting before the tribunal that this was a quote-unquote consensual, flirtatious exchange between the pair.
And I'm going to get to another part in just a moment, but I want to say with something that you said, because we know when Lisa Vetten was speaking about the power dynamics, it was quite, quite the one, especially when you listen to how, the defense was also trying to discredit her as well. But one would then, wonder how far did they manage to go as far as the communication is concerned. And I ask this against the backdrop of those controversial emojis that we ended up even having an expert to come and say what some of them do mean.
Well, the conversation is between June 2021 and a few months after that. And then we know in November 2022, there were those alleged incidents, in-person interactions, that Andiswa Mengo previously testified would have triggered the escalation of trying to get further assistance or a round table, and then her further revealing what took place. He's also gone into detail about these in-person interactions. He's alleged that they're malicious and that they were put before the tribunal to quote-unquote shame him. He's also given quite significant criticism towards the evidence leader, stating that an allegation of that nature should have never seen the light of day before the tribunal without extensive investigation. So it was his expectation that where there were disputes, because there's a number of disputes regarding that 14th or 15th of November incident, that further investigations needed to take place before it was brought to the tribunal. But one could argue that that is the purpose of an inquisitorial body, apologies, is that to find the facts before you give the report over to the JSC in order to give the final sanction, if there is one, in this particular case. But he's taken offense to the kind of allegations that he has faced and the level of investigation that he says he expected to take place before some of those allegations were put forth. And he's also, speaking on Lisa Vetten, there was a comment made that those were Western views being imposed on an African, but it's important to note that the context upon which this matter is being dealt with is this workplace environment, whether this was appropriate for the judge president to approach or pursue the judge's secretary in this manner. He concedes or admits that he was interested in the complainant, and that there was a pursuit there, and that at best it was flirtatious, nothing romantic took place, but the intention was to have a romantic relationship with her. But we've already heard from Andiswa Mengo that that is not how she experienced it, that these were unwanted advances, and that is why we're here at the complaints, or rather the tribunal, to look further at this complaint and investigate the allegations.
And Canny, you speak about this plot to shame him, which I want us to end off with, because he does say that, this is the incident that is alleged to have happened in his chambers, where he claims that him being, accused of exposing his manhood is a plot to shame him.
I don't know if he used the word plot, but he did say that it's meant to shame him. Well, look, it's quite an egregious allegation. If it were proven, it would have serious implications on the judge president. I'm pretty sure it would possibly be the end of his judicial career. Those are some of the critical issues that are at dispute. He states before the tribunal that it never took place, that no such incident took place. We know that there was evidence of Zintle Ngai, who came in to explain the events of the day of the 14th of November. And she gave the impression that the judge president was so occupied that afternoon, which minimized the possibility of such an incident taking place. But we know that Advocate Salome Skeppers, the evidence leader, said that she couldn't possibly have been at the desk the entire time or at his side the entire time. So it is possible that gaps could have existed for such a probability to exist. But once again, you have these multiple versions before the tribunal, where one states that this is what took place, the other vehemently denies it. And now the tribunal is tasked with coming up with a conclusion of whose version to believe on it. But the in-person interactions are quite egregious, so they're quite serious allegations. If they were proven, those would be serious implications for the judge president, but he is vehemently denying those allegations, and he's gone through, I think he went through quite a lengthy exercise comparing the affidavits to show that it was improbable that afternoon could have taken place the way that Mengo had testified it did before the tribunal.
Interesting couple of days it's going to be as we continue to hear from the Judge President. Thank you so much for keeping us updated there. That's my colleague, SABC News senior reporter Canny Maphanga. And she continues, monitoring these developments very closely. So you do want to stay ahead together with her as she will bring us another report tomorrow.